Hey, this is just a quick note about our sponsor, Privado, the premier enterprise privacy platform, purpose-built to bridge the gap between privacy and engineering. Its privacy code scanning solution embeds privacy compliance and governance into the product development lifecycle and empowers privacy and security teams with unparalleled visibility of sensitive data flows and the insights to find and fix privacy vulnerabilities. You can leverage Privado's data flows, dynamic data mapping, privacy assessment automation, and real-time visibility of privacy issues. Enter the era of proactive privacy and transform privacy from business blocker to business enabler. To learn more, go to privado.ai. Hello, I am Deborah J. Farber. Welcome to the Shifting Privacy Left podcast, where we talk about embedding privacy by design and default into the engineering function to prevent privacy harms to humans and to prevent dystopia. Each week, we'll bring you unique discussions with global privacy technologists and innovators working at the bleeding edge of privacy research and emerging technologies, standards, business models, and ecosystems. Today, I'm delighted to welcome my next guest, Jim Nasr, CEO of Acor, to continue our discussion about privacy and using distributed ledger technology, or DLT. We'll also discuss privacy at Hedera and chat about recent issues ripped from the headlines. Hello, Jim. Welcome back.
Hello, Deborah. I'm glad to be back again. I'm surprised and delighted that you're not bored already, but yeah.
I could never get bored of geeking out about privacy. So
I meant bored with me, but that's okay.
Well, I could never get bored of you either, Jim.
You're too kind.
Maybe so. So last week we spoke a lot about building decentralized applications on distributed ledger technology. And we're going to continue that discussion. But I want to focus a little more on some other things. So, for instance, you lead the Privacy Market Development Fund for Hedera Hashgraph, which provides non-dilutive grants to development teams that build out privacy-enhancing apps for use on the Hedera network. Can you tell us more about the fund, its purpose, who's it intended for, or who should apply? What are you looking for in a good submission?
So, first, the HBAR Foundation, as you probably already know, and your audience may know, they're really, if you like, the accelerator, or the foundation that's trying to accelerate Hedera adoption, increase Hedera use cases. And they were put in place about a year ago and really started kind of getting getting actually a lot of applications coming into the website. hbarfoundation.org, I believe, is the website. And then after a few months of dealing with, I would say, possibly hundreds of applications and grant requests, they saw some patterns and proactively tried to address certain categories. One of those was this privacy space, and I think they saw some, and they also, as we also, of course, agree, see Hedera as being a platform that can enhance privacy type solutions and provide distributed ledger technology that could be used for all kinds of privacy type solutions. And whether it's some of the things we have spoken about in a prior conversation, for instance, to support privacy preserved anchoring of data, healthcare data as example, or non-fungible tokens represent consent, things like this, or perhaps things such as decentralized identity, or providing tooling for instance, kind of cross-wallet, I guess, identity type of functionality, or to support rights of individuals, in a way that's privacy preserving. There's many use cases. So I think that was really the thinking then there, Deborah. And then since we had done some work in this space, and we spoke last week about RiceHash, also my background and my team's background, and having done quite a lot of compliance work, particularly in healthcare, and certainly some understanding of privacy and security and things like this. Again, largely from the healthcare background, I was approached to see if I'd be interested in help supporting this fund. And that's really where the story started. at the beginning of this year in 2022. And since then, really, I've been working with the HBAR Foundation to vet many applications that have come through and then take them through a pretty disciplined process that we have developed and enhanced with the HBAR Foundation to really identify kind of the ask, identify whether the fit is right, and then if those kind of questions, are positive and favorable, then really getting into the nitty-gritty of identifying and defining the scope of work that would be commensurate or that would be represented with a particular grant and the amount of money that would go with that and milestones and triggers for receiving funds at different milestones and all kinds of like low-level detail. And that's really been the process and the work over the last 10 months or so since the beginning of the year. And since then, I think we've had 4 or 5 or 6, I forget exactly, grantees, quite a large backlog, that we're queuing up for next year, and a lot of interaction with some really good projects, some of whom have received the grants, some of whom were directed for whatever reasons to perhaps other accelerators that maybe they weren't ready yet, or some were given some advice about how to prepare perhaps best for a reapplication, things like this. But that's really been the process, and it's been very I want to say very, very time consuming, without doubt. It's been fulfilling, working with lots and lots of startups and just seeing the ideas and kind of patterns and things out there. And I also, frankly, kind of really seeing where, we as a community, as a Hedera community, still have some gaps in tools and tooling that needs to be made or areas where maybe there's demand but not sufficient supply of knowledge and expertise and things like this. So all of that has been a really interesting learning thing and a lot of points of reflection, certainly for me. And we've tried to kind of feed that back to the foundation and hopefully improve both the process, but also kind of some of the infrastructure and kind of the resourcing we need to drive this even more.
Thank you for that. So based on the Privacy Market Development Fund, grant applicants and awards thus far, are you seeing any trends in the space that are worth mentioning?
Yeah, certainly. I would say that the first trend, and this is one that I think we spoke about a little bit last week in the context of data stamping, is really this idea that pretty much every one of these, every one of the grantees and many of the other potential grantees that we've seen, there is this undercurrent of verifying things happening, proof of things happening. Right? I think we've seen that across the board. I kind of feel like that is one of those, I feel like that's your brine. That's like the basics of the recipe. Again, it doesn't mean that it has to be done in every case. It doesn't mean it has to be done for every transaction. It also, frankly, doesn't mean that you're going to implement it correctly. There's still some nuance and thinking that has to go into it. But nonetheless, we see it as really an undercurrent for a lot of the use cases. This at least basic verification of transactions and showing improving authenticity. So I think another trend that we've seen, and this is one that we've really tried to work very, very hard on with the grantees, is separating the function of what they're trying to do versus the DLT element, right? Because the grantees that we have worked with, and then one of them actually is in healthcare, which is, of course, near and dear to my heart. What they're actually trying to do, the function they're trying to do, is in context of their business. For instance, managing athletes' rights or engaging potential patients for clinical research or connecting in a privacy-preserving way, connecting siloed kind of data that represents individual, and things like this with consent. But making sure that they understand that those things, their applications, they need to work correctly. They need to be usable. They need to meet the demands of their potential users, right? That this is not just, we're not just trying to stick a blockchain label on everything and say, you're good to go. That there's actually, this whole kind of plumbing concept that I mentioned last time. that is at play, which is let's use Hedera, let's use it for what it's really good at. But you have to do more than that. We're not just trying to like move, like kind of transactions from, or do swaps of transactions from one kind of blockchain or one wallet to another. That's not it. If that happens to happen because it's implicit to the functional need, then so be it. We'll do that. But that's not the usability. The usability is whatever the context of your application is. So that's been, I think, a kind of a real pattern and something that we've really tried to do, because end of the day, I think valuable use cases here that hopefully we are developing are contextual. They're contextual to the business model or the customers and the users that these companies are working with, and not just, like I mentioned, not just because we add a blockchain label to it. So there's a couple of common things. I think another one, and this is a difficult one, and I'm not sure if it's necessarily a pattern, but we're working on it, is how do we do the blockchain elements and components in a way that doesn't impact usability. And I give you a discrete example. We have had a number of conversations, with one of our grantees around which wallet would be used. How would you make the wallet kind of be adopted or adoptable, or do you use an existing wallet and have that basically Hedera enable that and things like this. But the crux of it, though, is this conversation around usability, because ultimately adoption, like certainly to me, adoption is a direct derivative of usability. So, and if you don't get adoption, then you could argue that the whole grant process wasn't necessarily worth it, because we're not really driving usage. So a lot of this kind of goes back to basic concepts like, is it usable? Are people going to use it? And if so, how do you increase adoption, and what are the critical barriers for adoption and things like that? So we think through that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello, loyal listeners. The Shifting Privacy Left podcast is seeking sponsors who want to help educate our growing community of privacy engineers. Position your brand in front of privacy engineers, architects, developers, researchers, and privacy tech buyers. Insert a 30 to 60 second ad like this one into every published episode of the podcast. This is dynamic content after all. Feature your new product, an upcoming conference, a sponsored special deal, endless opportunities. Email sponsorship@shiftingprivacyleft.com for more information on our sponsorship package. Okay, let's get back to our engaging privacy conversation.
Thanks for that. I mean, that's actually quite a few trends. I was not expecting you to list so many, and that's really great to hear. So what can you tell us about some of the privacy innovations that the Privacy Market Development Fund has funded so far? Are there any particular standouts that come to mind, or, do you want to just go through one or two that might be interesting for this audience?
Yeah, certainly. And some of these are already, or not, actually all of them are underway, the ones that we have granted, but not necessarily fully public. I'm not able to necessarily give a lot of details about all of them. What I would say, though, is that there was a public crowdcast about a month and a half ago, and three of these companies were there, and they had a public pitch. So I can certainly talk about them a little bit more, but I don't want to get into information that may be confidential at this time, and just kind of not overspeak things that I may not have consent from them to do so. But as example, one of our grantees is doing a very, very interesting kind of and potentially like a really significant effort around basically taking the decentralized identifier kind of standards and taking that and basically implementing it for Hedera using. There's a lot of, I think there's like 80 plus, 90 plus methodologies for DID. So this is an evolving space, but not to get into all of the details, but there's one that I believe is called the PKH methodology, and taking that, and I believe that's the one that we believe a few folks, in this privacy Hedera space believe, is going to stand the test of time in terms of adoption. So taking that and basically building it into a wallet, in fact, using MetaMask, using kind of state-of-the-art MetaMask, it's called a Snap technology, and essentially integrating Hedera DIDs into that. So we're excited about that because it opens up a lot of new windows.
What does KPH stand for? Did you say?
PKH.
Oh, PKH.
Honestly, I don't know what it stands for. It's a good question. It's one of the methodologies for DID, and this is a space that gets very kind of nuanced. So this is let me see. It's a pseudonym DID method. It's basically using public key hashes, which that's what
public key hash. There you go.
Public key hash. Exactly.
That makes sense.
And you may remember in our last session we talked a lot about hashing and using public key hashes. So it's in line and along those. But I would certainly say straight up that I am by no means like a DID PKH expert. I'm just obviously working with folks who are experts, but trying to help them articulate the task and help them get the project going. But certainly the implementation is being done by folks who are experts.
So are they creating a new protocol called PKH, or is this an existing protocol they're integrating into?
Exactly. The methodology already exists, and they're really just taking it and bringing it into Hedera and exposing it. Because ultimately what really matters is, can you do decentralized identity, right, with Hedera and using this DID kind of spec. And that's really what they're trying to do. That's one, and their name is called Tomb Technologies. They've been in this space for a number of years and have done work in other chains. So there's evidence of kind of their work, but also kind of learning that they can bring to Hedera and vice versa, because they're learning about certain things around Hedera and the methods available. And then, of course, we are in turn beneficiaries of their experience just working in this space. So that's definitely one I'm interested and excited about, because I think it's got repercussions, particularly in bringing MetaMask. I think that's really the bigger thing, going back to my comment about usability and really us trying to drive usability, because that will lead to adoption. But we think that if we can essentially, in real simple language, if existing MetaMask users can all of a sudden now have a Hedera identity and be able to leverage Hedera for decentralized identity, that opens up potential, like significant adoption if it's done correctly, if it's done, in a way that doesn't impact usability, and that's what we're really trying to drive towards. So that's one example.
So I have two questions regarding that. One is, when discussing privacy, where does decentralized identity fit in? Because in the past, identity has been kind of a siloed, separate discipline from privacy and data protection. And with these new emerging tech stacks for the new evolution of the web, which, for lack of a better word right now, I'll call Web3 technologies, it seems like they're coming together and more important to one another. And you kind of, if you're talking privacy, kind of seem to need to understand how identity fits in. So I kind of want to hear your answer to that question. And then I think the other question I had to do with PKH, but if I remember what it is, I will ask it after you answer this one.
Gotcha. Well, let's look at the first one. So I would say, as you know, Deborah, privacy, rather identity, is a pretty thorny topic in general, right? And certainly decentralized identity is by no means proven at this stage. There's all kinds of things that they have to think through. There's technical issues with W3 and the DID standards. There's finally been some stability and spec that some people have adopted, but it's really been of recent times, maybe last year or so, that's really kind of got the stage. So it's certainly not.
The standards are in flux for sure.
Exactly. So it's certainly not something that you could say there's a massive amount of adoption or implementations around, but there's an opportunity. So that's the first thing. But then I think the much bigger context, though, with identity is and certainly decentralized identity is it opens up a lot of new use cases. For instance, for the refugees as an example, or the underbanked or the underserved. There's a lot of scenarios where you can see a decentralized identity being very, very helpful. And again, certainly in the Web3 context, going back to this concept of a wallet, right? Because right now, you would most likely, even if you're just looking at crypto, I'm not even talking about other use cases like your patient health record or your like reward tokens for frequent mileage or whatever. There's many other use cases where you could have stuff in your digital wallet. But even right now, you most likely have like many different wallets, almost like a one-on-one mapping of wallets to cryptocurrencies, right? Which is clearly not usable, right? And it's not a good model. It doesn't make sense. Like in an analog world, you wouldn't have like 12 different wallets if you have 12 different fiat currencies. You just have the same wallet, right? So there's definitely kind of this context that if you have decentralized identity, that could be sitting in your wallet that could help you open up interaction with other decentralized apps and really be part of this larger context of one wallet that allows you to interact with many different applications or many different dApps. So that's kind of like the vision. The vision is a good vision. Like the vision makes sense. And certainly is Web3 centric. If we just at the academic vision level, it all like seems hunky-dory and like really copacetic. The issue is, well, how do we get there? Because it's pretty thorny and it's kind of meandering. It's not a straight path there.
That's a great question. How do we get there, Jim?
Yeah. So how do we get there? Honestly, I mean, and this is really, I think, where somebody like the HBAR Foundation is an instrumental element, in basically doing some hypothesis testing, right? Because we don't know how he's going to get there. As an example, you could say, well, what if the U.S. government did it? Well, if they did it, then now it's a decentralized identity because, who's to say that that's, I mean, we have that now, but even then it's highly centralized, but it's also really not universal. Like it's, as example, the passport is the only federal ID that we have. And that's, or issued by the federal government. I know we have the driver's license, but not everybody's got a passport, right? So, and certainly things like Social Security have all kinds of other privacy issues and things like this that go with it. So all to say, I think how we get there is a series of steps taken, collectively, or hopefully in the right direction collectively, but they're not necessarily all in the same kind of direction. Like you kind of have to experiment, and there may be a switchback or two along the way before you get to mountaintop on this one. And I think that's really what we're doing is with this project and some other ones that are happening in this space and other spaces, is really doing some of these. And like I mentioned, what we're hoping for and what we're experimenting with is try to stick with standards, because nobody wants to build things that then a year later, there's a whole different standard for it. That's not a very good use of time or money. So build on standards and try as much as possible to find a standard that we think is going to stand the test of time. And like I mentioned, in this space, we don't really know. So we're making educated guesses amongst a set of people, who are experienced, but nobody knows everything perfectly. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is try and basically do these things in a way that you're meeting the longer term vision of usability for Web3, right? So one wallet, one decentralized, or maybe a couple of decentralized identifiers, depending on context, and many different use cases. I think that's ultimately, if you think about that could lead to adoption and usability that's acceptable, as opposed to everybody's doing their own thing, everybody creates their own wallet. So to be very, very specific here, then going back to this particular project, what we've tried to do is at the very least, kind of hold one of the variables, that being the wallet, which is don't create your own wallet. Take an existing wallet that is widely used, MetaMask in this case, build off of that, integrate that to Hedera, hopefully take advantage of the users that are already using that for adoption, as opposed to create yet another new wallet that then,
So let me interrupt you for a bit. When you say don't create your own wallet, I want to unpack the fact that that from something like MetaMask, which is a crypto wallet, unless you add additional protocols for self-sovereign identity, for instance, then you're not going to have a SSI wallet. So like the foundation of a crypto wallet and an SSI wallet are not necessarily the same. Are you suggesting that you take a current crypto wallet and then leverage that to then add to it and then add for the standards for decentralized identity, self-sovereign identity, like the DIDs, the verified credentials, specifications, or are you suggesting something else?
That's precisely it.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. And I mentioned, I think in passing, and not that I think we should get into this conversation because it's quite detailed, but MetaMask has this extension kind of capability called snaps, which basically allow you to extend it for additional use cases. So that's precisely what we're talking about.
That's fascinating. I had not been following that, and I think that's smart for MetaMask to have done. So really cool. Really is going to help with adoption of the standards.
Well, I mean, to be clear, Deborah, this is the first time we're doing this. So the snaps are new. Some of the underlying technologies around this are new. Like I mentioned, the DID methodologies are evolving, and the standards are somewhat new. So these are some of the kind of the hypotheses that we're trying to test. But really, ultimately, there is this idea that it's unsustainable to have 10 different wallets for crypto or for other purposes, and expect that really seriously people are going to maintain 10 different wallets. That just intuitively doesn't make sense. But so going back to this comment about the long-term vision is a good one, that you really have just one wallet and that serves your cryptocurrencies, your SSIs, your DIDs, or whatever it is, your verified credentials, plus additional use cases, such as example, one of the other things we're working on, which is accessing, for instance, your health records using an app with a DID. Yes, so that's so you could have your health records on it, not the actual health records itself, but references to your health records to synchronize, on an app as well, all using the same wallet as basically kind of the keeper of the keys, if you like.
Fascinating. That was a really great discussion on decentralized identity. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of to round out the market development fund, the privacy market development fund at the HBAR Foundation that, gives grants to those building on Hedera. Is there anything you wish an applicant would submit, particular area that needs attention on the network, but isn't currently being worked on? Like, well, I just had mentioned, self-sovereign identity and DID protocols, or potentially integration of zero knowledge approaches, or really anything that you wish you could see submitted. You have the floor if you'd like to make a call to action to those listening who might be interested in submitting an application.
Honestly, Deborah, I like to kind of keep it simple. I think there are a lot of people who are doing very interesting things around zero knowledge. As some are, kind of intimating, poking around with quantum technologies around privacy preservation or privacy type use cases. I think all of that to me is interesting, but again, I don't know. I kind of feel like it requires like a significant amount of expertise that's probably centralized to just a couple of pockets, and probably a lot of money and a lot of focus. So the kind of things that at least I'm seeing right now with Hedera and privacy type use cases are a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more practical, or just extending, kind of applications that already exist and just saying, all right, look, you could take this existing application and you could just improve it. You could improve the fitness of the work you're doing by just a little bit, but that will still yield you good amount of results that would lower your costs, perhaps that would give you more transparency and things like this. I'll give you a real example. I don't want to be hypothetical, where like one of the use cases we've been kicking around with our privacy fund, is to take kind of sensitive cloud type transactions. So for instance, when you go on a cloud, just your regular, kind of say Amazon, but we're talking to somebody that's not Amazon. And if you go on as an admin, you can have privileged transactions, such as delete or removing logs or whatever. And that can certainly lead to potential security holes, that can lead to privacy and possibly ethical issues. Some of the things that we have seen just recently with shenanigans, and for instance, with crypto exchange sending $400 million to a wrong address. Some of these things would be privileged type transactions that can really only happen with like certain high-level user authentication or user profiles and things like this. So what if you could take those transactions and basically those sensitive transactions and the audit trail and have that in a privacy preserving way basically be anchored to a public ledger? So that's, again, it's not, we're not trying to reinvent, or we're not, I don't think we're on the edge of innovation here. However, to me, it's a high value privacy preserving type of transaction that really would be needed for all kinds of purposes to prove that you're being a good actor, right? And if you're doing it at the cloud level, now it's not just about a specific use case. It could be, like, for instance, it could be about all sensitive transactions taken on by a central exchange, a central crypto exchange, as an example. So the ramifications of something like that can go across many different use cases, possibly, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of users, yet be done fairly simply at the infrastructure level. So that's the kind of thinking and that's the direction that I'm thinking about right now, where I think is practical, is probably quite low cost, is probably quite, I would say, quick to implement if you can find the right infrastructure and the current partners that buy into this kind of context.
Thank you. All right. So now I'd like to, I guess, shift to some of the crazy headlines that are currently occupying, at least my attention as I'm surfing through Twitter and watching what I think is the collapse of Twitter. The first I'd like to bring up is the FTX crypto exchange debacle and almost implosion and their loss of trust. Do you want to quickly set the scene for what's happened over the past few days? And then we can kind of both just have a conversation about how crazy it is, first of all, but what's going on, and unpack that for those who are listening.
Yeah, certainly. And to be clear, I am not a DeFi person, nor do I, work for any of the centralized.
And this is an exchange specifically, right? Like, it's not even DeFi specifically. It's like a
no, it's not.
Right.
It's really, what I would say though is, and I think it actually kind of people started understanding this or seeing the kind of unraveling about a week ago. So around, I want to say November 9th to 10th, something like this. And really what it is that FTX was at the time, just a week ago, or a couple of weeks ago from whenever it is that you listen to this, was the second biggest crypto exchange, right? So people will go in there and they would buy different cryptocurrencies or you would trade it and things like this. And they take US dollars and, so that's really what FTX was. And then specifically to FTX, so they're not the only one, like crypto.com is another example. They also really had a significant amount of kind of political influence and name recognition. As example, FTX, I believe, has sponsored or had sponsored a number of stadiums, and, all over conferences. So there was definitely name recognition. And folks may remember the commercials that they did last year with Larry David and things like that. So fair amount of notoriety as well. So relatively, I would say, certainly in this space, relatively well known, right? And perhaps the only other exchange that's as well known is Binance, which I think a lot of folks are familiar with. So all to say, what transpired was that basically, and I'm going to just short circuit this since there's a lot of information about this, that essentially FTX, but it looks like it was running a very elaborate, Ponzi scheme where a lot of the, kind of the assets that they had were their own, or at least were kind of collaterals for the trading and the liquidity of their exchange were really based on their own kind of FTT crypto and some other cryptos that they created for other projects. And kind of a long story short, this house of cards basically just kind of fell and very, very quickly, became evident that there really was way less substance there than was perceived in the market or was, kind of communicated by the folks at FTX. And, lo and behold, within a few days, they declared bankruptcy. And unfortunately, many, many people may have lost all their funds there or may lose their funds. It's not determined yet. I think Binance may be coming in and providing some kind of support or whatever for some users, but it's to be determined. Of course, the regulators in the US and in other kind of the Bahamas and other jurisdictions are getting involved. So we'll see where it winds up. But the net of it, though, of course, is that it's created a tremendous amount of I would say like a big dark cloud on the crypto space and a lot of noise. And of course, a lot of people, who are now just reevaluating the crypto space and what to do and many other things. I think that there's a lot of people who are just basically innocent bystanders in this. They're not sophisticated institutional investors. They're people like you and I, just maybe with just a little bit of investment here and there, maybe just relying on the exchange to be there, and all of a sudden realizing that, oh wow, this implosion's happened. They don't know what to do. They can't withdraw their funds and so on and so forth. So I think that's the net of it. Yeah. So obviously it's not a good place. It's certainly casts a very, very dark cloud on the entire crypto space. As an example, I've had our clients, and we're, like I mentioned, we're by no means in the cryptocurrency space. We're really adjacent. We're in the DLT space, and we're very much benign kind of use cases in this context. But of course, clients calling us and very concerned about our viability as example or exposure they may have to cryptocurrencies. You name it, all these things are kind of popping up. And I think over the last few days. And I'm sure we'll be continuing, very, very large Twitter-verse conversations, spaces, 30, 40,000 people on it. So a fair amount of flooding and of course, a lot of misinformation, disinformation going on. And yeah, it's difficult, I think, for an average person. I mean, even if you're really in this space, it's a significant load to kind of carry in your head and understand kind of where things are, who to trust, what to do, or even if you can withdraw your funds from exchanges, and so on. So all this is kind of happening at the same time.
Indeed. In fact, I think some of the themes around this incident that are becoming clear to me are the issue around centralized exchanges, how do we determine trust, and challenges around due diligence and when people say do your own research. So there's first the topic of centralization, where many of those who are in the crypto space truly believe that you should be managing your own crypto keys and not have them in a centralized exchange that's holding the keys on your behalf. Because if you were managing your own keys, you wouldn't lose access to the actual asset that is now sitting on the exchange. The inability to withdraw your funds or sell your, current assets for cash are controlled now by FTX, who's now in bankruptcy and therefore, or bankruptcy proceedings, and therefore, most individuals are not in the bankruptcy proceedings are probably going to have like the last whatever's left over after investors and people who have basically investors in the actual company as opposed to speculators on the currencies are going to walk away with any money that's left over. So this is really going to harm individuals who've put, trust in FTX to, in some sort of fiduciary responsibility kind of way. And the problem is we don't have US-based crypto regulation, but the crypto industry has been asking for clarity in certain areas so that we can, move forward. And so I know been this tension between, crypto's unregulated, and it's like, yeah, so go regulate it, and then nothing's happened. And so what I see happening here is we had this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, who was like, headed up FTX. He's 29 years old. And, Andreessen Horowitz and other investors, pretty much based on the stories that are out there, without doing a proper due diligence on how FTX operated, being based in, I think, let's see, I have Wikipedia up. They're incorporated in Antigua and Barbuda and headquartered in the Bahamas, right? None of this is in the US. So, if you're US or if you're outside of the Bahamas, you're in the EU, you're in the US, like you don't have necessarily the same protections. And the bankruptcy proceedings are now happening out of those countries and not in the United States. So, you don't have the same level of consumer protection that you would if a company was based in the United States, was headquartered in the United States, and then availed themselves of regulation by, US providers, or in Europe with European regulators. So I have a huge problem here with, given that this is people's money that they're putting and trusting in this technology that's run by, like, I think there's only like 26 people in the entire company of FTX, and that Sam Bankman-Fried was at, one point the second richest man in the world after Elon Musk, based off of, all of the money that he's made at FTX. Combined with the fact that it's an actual centralized exchange, which means that if FTX, which they did not, if they failed at managing appropriately the data and the, your asset generally, right? They ended up over leveraging elsewhere some of the money. They basically were gambling with the money that was put into FTX. And then when that didn't work out, there was like no liquidity left to make people whole for whatever they've put on the exchange. So it was a complete irresponsibility, no checks and balances in place. Privacy and security were kind of, not first and foremost. How did the multi-billionaires who invested in this guy and his company miss this lack of governance framework, right? I don't expect you to answer that question. It's more of me just fleshing out the problem, right? What this is hurting people, of course, because they lost money, but it's hurting the industry because now everyone who's not as close to the industry thinks that all of cryptocurrencies, distributed ledger technologies, all the good innovative work that's being done is somehow it's all intertwined with what FTX is. And they're looking at this debacle as, see, this is why crypto equals bad, as opposed to looking at the technology and whether or not a particular technology can be used for good or bad, and how do you threat model for it and, architect appropriately. It's now broad swaths, broad brushes that people are painting the crypto industry as being about nefarious business models and what could go wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that initial assumption. It's just not accurate to paint the whole industry that way. And so that's my fear about this FTX debacle, whether or not somebody hates centralized exchanges because you don't own your own keys or not. What do you think of that? What do you think of like centralized exchanges? Like, personally, I do use Coinbase for various reasons. One is they have a million, they're based in the United States. They're a public company. There's transparency there. Regulators, they hold themselves out to regulators based on what they do and say outside of just anything specific to crypto. And they have a $1 million guarantee now that if you have any sort of stolen funds or loss of funds, that they will insure against. So to me, these are protections that give me trust, even though I'm not managing my own cryptographic keys for the particular, assets that I have in there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, Deborah, and I think we kind of have to take it, just try and unlayer some of the different things that are happening. So firstly, in no particular order, I think there is this misperception, and it goes back to usability and adoption. I hate to kind of go back to that all the time, but there's this misperception that an exchange is actually a trusted custodian of the user. And it clearly is not, right? And the same thing with a bank. And we saw this in, 2009, 8, with the financial, kind of crisis in the US. And ultimately, you had these massive, like Lehman Brothers, right? They basically went away. Loads of people lost their money. And in certain other cases, like Merrill Lynch, as example, the US government, had to come and bail them out and essentially do it for the kind of the greater good type of thing. But I think understanding that there is a difference between a custodian of your money versus an exchange, whose purpose really is to make profit, right? That's what they're there to do ultimately. They're not a charity. They're and somebody like Sam Bankman-Fried with zero experience whatsoever in running a bank or an exchange or whatever prior to running FTX, clearly there's no evidence that he even understands what are the basic premises for running these kind of things. So I think just at a principle level, we kind of all need to, and hopefully this is a wake-up call for a lot of us, including myself, and just this idea that these exchanges, none of them are really your trusted custodian, which kind of goes back to this concept that we spoke about last week, which is, all right, in an analog world, you actually do have trusted custodians. You do have fiduciaries. You do have like lawyers and notary public and some other people who help you if things go awry, right? If for instance, if you lose your, I don't know, like the key to your or your password to your safe deposit box, you could potentially retrieve it by going to an attorney with a power of, with your power of attorney, kind of declaration, and talk to notary public or some other way of being able to get that back. But, however, we don't really have that, in the world of crypto. So I think that's something that to me is a point of reflection, which is, all right, if somebody like Binance or somebody like FTX is not my custodian, right? And it is possible that they either mess things, or Crypto.com, they mess things up, like they send money to the wrong place and then now they're no longer liquid. Or, there's a potentially nefarious set of activities happening with or without, people's knowledge. How do I protect myself, right? And this kind of goes back to this more of a purist point of view that, well, if it's not your key, it's not your money, right? That you got to manage your key, right? Okay, great. So I manage my key. So now I have, let's say, I don't know, $10,000 in crypto, and managing my key, but my key is actually some, long number or like a 24-letter word recovery phrase, right? That I can easily forget or misplace a piece of paper, or somebody else could steal it. And then kind of gets in this, and frankly, there's a whole usability of how do you figure out, it's fairly easy and conventional to sign up to Coinbase or Binance or whatever. That's relatively straightforward, but it's not nearly as straightforward to go from there to like a ledger or even a paper kind of hard wallet, right? It's not nearly as straightforward for most people.
Right.
So that's the first step. But let's assume you did that. Let's assume you now have a ledger, but a ledger being a hard cold wallet, right? And you have a password and all these words that you can help to recover. But then how do you protect that? How do you, and who do you trust? Do you just trust yourself, or what if you forget it? Do you give it to your family? But what, so there are all these kind of questions I think need to be really thought through. I think that's where we're at right now, because if you take the like the inexperienced crypto users or the speculators investing not a lot of money, but just a lot to them, but not in massive numbers in context of institutional investors with sophisticated tools. That's kind of, I think, where we're seeing the real problem, because yes, I think most people understand that there is there is another way than just trusting FTX or Binance or whoever. But that isn't easy to do. It's not just like they can't just take their phone and like scan a QR code and it's done. It's not that trivial. And then, oh, by the way, and this has happened to a lot of people, if you happen to upgrade your phone, right? Because remember, now it's not sitting on a decentralized exchange. It's just sitting on your phone. And you forget to save your private key, or you forget your recovery phrase or whatever, you could lose all the money right in your phone, even though so all these things kind of exist. And I think these are the kind of things that we've got to start educating ourselves on, and really kind of think about, okay, how does our real world right now work in those kind of contexts where there is, as example, like accountants and banks and power of attorneys and things like this that you can use, to kind of, figure your way around situations where you like, for instance, like this idea of a dead man switch, where, now you're dead and then all your assets, you don't want to just disappear. There's got to be some way of kind of recovering those. Basically building those kind of things for the crypto space. I think that's I feel like that's the stage that we're in. But the big thing though to me is, can that be done in a way that's usable? Because the way it's done right now is great for crypto native, and maybe for, I don't know, people who are going to really spend the time and kind of do the research on this. But realistically, for a lot of people, it's a step too far. It's not usable enough. And I think that's a real problem, because you get the context that by the pros of having cryptocurrencies is the fact that at least for now, no singular government can control that, and you can take your money with you and all these other things. But if you lose it, or if it's easy for somebody to basically lose the money on your behalf without your involvement, then that's not a good situation either. So anyway, I kind of feel like, going back to the original question, I think the layers that we're going to be looking at is, okay, how do we first make it easier for people to transition from this, what is like a very much a Web3 kind of world in the crypto space, to something that's a little bit closer to what they're familiar with? Because I think that's necessary, and perhaps vice versa. But if you're already on a crypto exchange, that's supposed to be like a Web3 world in reality, but it's maybe not. How do you ease that transition? And then I think, to me, as part of that is this idea that, at least for a period, maybe it's a decade, maybe it's two, I don't know how long it is. It's certainly not a year or two. It's more than that. There's got to be some people, some like actual people and institutes and buildings and places you can go to get some kind of protection, the kind of protections you're used to in the fiat world that just don't exist right now, or exist in very, very like limited pockets in the crypto space. So that's kind of what I see. I think there's more to it than that. I think, certainly self-reporting. Like you take SPF and this FTX stuff. There's like zero transparency about anything. The stuff they were doing, I read their balance sheet. There's so much going on that even if you were an expert on them, you probably wouldn't be able to really figure out, because it's so opaque and kind of, one hand feeds another and one wallet goes to another. So having like real transparency, on that is regulated, I think is very, very important, because you can't just say, well, here's a $1 trillion organization holding loads of people's monies that has zero regulation and zero transparency. That's unacceptable. So I think there's a lot of these kind of conversations and these kind of thoughts that we have to have.
It's really fascinating. Honestly, these on-ramps to the Web3 world and making them just more usable, easier for people to transition. In order to use the distributed ledger, or just, in order to use decentralized applications built on DLT technology, we need to make it easy. Like, we need those abstracted layers, like you said. And I think if you haven't already, take a listen to my second episode I did with Dave Burnett from Zero Biometrics, where we talked about using zero knowledge proofs for biometrics and replacing the BIP 39 12 or 24 words that you need to remember. That's an interesting one for anyone who's listening to maybe, listen in on a conversation about one way to make that authentication of identity easier in this, crypto world. But with that, I'm just so appreciative, Jim, that you've joined me here for 2 full episodes. Thank you so much for joining us today on Shifting Privacy Left. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we sign off for the episode?
Yeah, I really enjoyed our talk. It was I think this second part, is the kind of conversation that I know a lot of people are having right now, and it's necessary, even though we may not have a whole lot of answers. At least not answers that don't have a lot of flaws or limitations, but it's really necessary. And I think what you're doing with your podcast, is part of the answer. It's this cross domain education and cross context education is needed. I mean, you mentioned just, not that we're going to get into this, but perhaps you will on other conversations. You mentioned zero knowledge proof as something to look into. I certainly agree with you and tied to biometrics. But then there's, we talked on our prior chat about pseudonymized information that then, can be part of it's better than human readable information, but could be part of a trail, if you like breadcrumbing, and maybe making that, if not something that's regulated, something that's convention. That's what we're trying to do in our work, and make it a convention, and hopefully other people would do it. But then, again, things like recovery of keys, because managing keys is so difficult, and I'm sure you could spend perhaps many a podcast on key management, but like, how do you use multi-sigs and multi-signatory, and can you have fiduciaries there, and can you perhaps tie it to trusted kind of hardware and things like this, and things like shared secrets, which are already it's a thing. You could definitely do it, but hardly anyone really knows how to use it. So anyway, not to get into low-level detail, but I feel like there is reason for optimism, because the technologies really are there. We're not talking about creating these things out of nowhere. I think what we're talking about is, one, how do we hold some of these bigger entities and networks to more of a convention of auditable transparency on things that are really relevant and important and materially impact many, many people, like we've seen with FTX. But then also, how do we, hopefully, maybe using the community and the conversation we're having, ease adoption or ease the usage and increase adoption of technology that already do exist to make life a little bit, this transition from Web 2 to Web 3 a little bit easier.
Thank you so much, Jim. Until next Tuesday, everyone, we'll be back with interesting content with another great guest.
Thanks for joining us this week on Shifting Privacy Left. Make sure to visit our website, shiftingprivacyleft.com, where you can subscribe to updates so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found this episode valuable, go ahead and share it with a friend. And if you're an engineer who cares passionately about privacy, check out Privado, the developer-friendly privacy platform and sponsor of this show. To learn more, go to privado.ai. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode. Bye for now.